Since January 2025, the United States has not taken on any obligations to supply weapons to Ukraine. By the end of July, the Pentagon reported on its weapons stockpiles and stated that additional foreign shipments would deplete United States reserves in case of an attack. And these reserves would be lower than what Congress decided regarding the amount of weaponry that the Army, Navy, and other branches of the United States should have. Based on this report, the White House halted the supply of ammunition and weapons to Ukraine at Ukraine's request, addressed to European countries. The response was that our own stockpile levels have been depleted and have fallen below what we are required to have in our warehouses and storage facilities. Ukraine finds itself in a position where it needs to sit down at the negotiating table. Neither Zelensky nor his office nor his generals want to stop the war. But I'm afraid that in this situation, Ukraine will have to decide: either lose another million young men and women and still give up its territories to Russia, or stop the bloodshed right now. I'm not a military man, of course, and not a politician, ladies and gentlemen, and I don't know the Ukrainian people, their traditions, or anything else. But maybe it's completely impossible to make a deal with Putin. Or maybe it's humiliating, or maybe it's something else. But faced with the fact that now Ukrainians will die dozens of times faster, maybe Ukraine will decide to negotiate. Meanwhile, Ukraine's northern neighbor, as you understand, I'm talking about Russia for the 12th time. Well, from what is known, I tried to kill Zelensky. Putin himself lives in constant fear of assassination, but if he is killed, most likely it won't be by Ukrainians, but by his own closest people. I'll talk about this, but I'm absolutely blown away about the CIA investigation. Where did the legend about Trump's connection with Putin come from? And it is a legend. From the very beginning, we know that during Hillary's election campaign, they were looking for a way to distract attention from the reset button. With Lavrov, if you remember, there was such a thing that Madame brought to Moscow. And about the nuclear deal for selling uranium in exchange for a $50 million contribution to the Clinton Foundation. So the United States will give you something, and in return you will pay me personally. Ukrainian intelligence reported that they stopped an assassination attempt by Russian special forces on President Zelensky's life.
Ukrainian intelligence reports that they foiled a Russian plot to assassinate President Zelensky. A Russian plot to kidnap and assassinate President Volodymyr Zelensky and other high-ranking military and political figures. The plot involved recruiting military officers who were supposed to take Mr. Zelensky hostage and then kill him. Zelensky said that there were at least 10 assassination attempts on his life in 2022 alone.
Volodymyr Alexandrovich reported that Volodymyr Vladimirovich has already done this for the 12th time this year. Or maybe not at all, actually. I think since the beginning of the war, he has been sending assassins, attempting to take the life of Zelensky and a number of other Ukrainian figures.
On June 23, it was reported that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was the target of an elaborate assassination attempt involving a Polish retiree, a suitcase drone, and a sniper rifle. According to Polish authorities, this man was arrested in April 2024 after attempting to bring an armed drone through Rzeszów-Jasionka Airport, a key NATO logistics hub near the Ukrainian border. His mission, allegedly coordinated by Russian intelligence, was to track the president's movements and prepare an attack. The suspect, identified only as Paweł K., is a 60-year-old Polish citizen and a former serviceman with a long history of pro-Soviet views. Prosecutors claim that he remained loyal to the ideology of the Soviet Union even after its collapse in 1991 and maintained ties with Russian intelligence networks. In the following decades, he did not act for money or under pressure. He believed in Putin's mission to kill the president of Ukraine. His mission: locate Zelensky, aid the sniper operation, and deliver an armed drone for the attack. His arrest on April 17, 2024 was the result of a joint operation by Polish counterintelligence and Ukraine's security service, the Security Service of Ukraine. But that was not the only attempt.
By the way, I don't understand why the Russians want to kill Zelensky. Do they really think he's actually in charge of something and that it will stop functioning if he's gone? Or is it purely symbolic, like getting rid of the main spider in the enemy's lair or something like that? Some kind of nonsense. But that's their business, if it's true, of course, and not just stories that are made up in Ukraine for propaganda. At the end of the segment, we'll try to answer the question, why did they do it?
As mentioned, there were multiple attempts. Around the same time in May, two Ukrainian colonels, Andriy Hyuk and Oleksandr Tkach, were arrested by the Security Service of Ukraine for participating in a federal security service-backed plot to assassinate President Zelensky, as well as several other high-ranking Ukrainian officials. Both men served in the state security service responsible for the president's safety. Intelligence reports indicate they were recruited by Russia's Federal Security Service prior to February 2022. They were to be paid around $50,000 for assassinating the sitting president, a shockingly low amount for such an operation. Their mission was to enlist Zelensky's close associates for a hostage or sniper operation and supply drones, missiles, and explosives. One colonel has since confessed to coordinating missile and drone attacks targeting not only Zelensky during his motorcade or at his office, but also Kirilo Budanov and the head of the Security Service of Ukraine, Vasyl Malyuk. At the same time, the attack was timed to coincide with Putin's inauguration. Thanks to intercepted communications and careful surveillance, they were both detained before they could carry out their plans.
So, for $100,000, you can buy two colonels to assassinate the president of the country. Either colonels have gotten cheaper or something's not right here.
Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion in 2022, there have been more than a dozen assassination attempts on Zelensky. In the first 48 hours of the war, Russia attempted to seize Kyiv with airborne troops and saboteurs before the main invasion. One of the stated goals was to capture or kill the president. As we all saw, that attempt failed, and the next one and the one after that. In the last 2 years, Ukrainian and Western intelligence have discreetly thwarted all plots. Some were credible, some were clumsy, but nearly all are linked to Russian special services, like the main intelligence directorate and Federal Security Service and irregular forces, including Wagner Group operatives and Chechen paramilitary units. The Russians' methods have changed.
If we are to believe and judge by what we are told, the idea of eliminating Zelensky has taken on a kind of manic tone within the walls of the Kremlin. Just like Putin once burned with the desire to imprison Saakashvili. Perhaps he wanted to torture him like Peter I or Ivan the Terrible. Now it seems he's burning with the desire to outlast Zelensky. I think Zelensky said something like he'll outlive him because he's younger. I think that Putin, being a vindictive person, decided to do exactly that if, again, all of this is true.
Early military efforts involved Wagner soldiers and Kadyrovites crossing the border to assassinate Zelensky. Now the attempts have become quieter and include espionage and activated sleeper agents such as Pavel K. Operatives move across the borders of the Schengen zone with clean IDs, drones, and suitcases, while targets are scouted by volunteers who haven't served in the military for decades. Zelensky's security is evolving to match the threat, as evidenced by his continued survival despite the joke-like situation. His erratic schedule, often a mystery even to his inner circle, is a key reason he has evaded assassination or abduction by the two colonels.
I wonder if Zelensky has a body double, and if so, is his wife aware of it?
Convoys are redirected without warning. False appearances are a common thing. Many of his public appearances are pre-recorded, but such a level of secrecy and vigilance is necessary.
So you could say that Zelensky is never actually where it's announced that he is. Interestingly, the population of the country no longer believes that Ukraine can win this war.
Although in March 2025, a poll showed that 82% of Ukrainians still support resistance even without the help of the United States. Only 23% think a total military victory is possible.
In other words, to put it simply, we can't defeat Russia, but we also can't just surrender. It seems that no one asked them the question, How would you feel if the war ended with Eastern Ukraine going to the Russians and the West, cooperating with the United States?
But more and more people prefer a negotiated end to the conflict if it means stopping the bloodshed.
So, what is stopping the Ukrainian leadership from joining efforts with the United States to end the war? Maybe Putin thinks that without Zelensky, Ukraine will agree to territorial division and peace agreements more quickly.
Why is Putin so obsessed with killing Zelensky? Well, let's figure it out. Vladimir Putin has a long history of eliminating people who make him look weak, and he's not the kind of head of state we would recognize as normal. His approach to power has always been more like organized crime than state governance in Russia and neighboring countries. If you are loyal to Putin, he will be loyal to you. But if you betray his trust or contradict him, he will kill you. And opponents don't surrender quietly. They are silenced in a way that intimidates others. Putin has a long list of dead enemies, and his tactics are ruthless. Zelensky became a personal target the moment he refused to surrender or flee. In the early days of the invasion, when Kyiv was under attack, American intelligence offered him a way out of the country, to which he replied, "I need ammunition, not a ride." He decided to stay with his people and become a symbol of Ukrainian resistance for the whole world. And this decision made him something that Putin could not ignore, and a man who needed to be broken. In the first days of the full-scale invasion, about 400 Wagner Group mercenaries landed in Hostomel with orders to seize the airport and break through to Kyiv to eliminate Ukraine's top leadership. At the same time, Ramzan Kadyrov's troops were advancing from the north, tasked with storming the capital and destroying the command infrastructure. These were unconventional combat missions. These were assassination attempts aimed at overthrowing the Ukrainian government before it could gather allies and organize a defense. And they got dangerously close. Zelensky's staff barricaded him inside the presidential complex, blocking doors with furniture and distributing rifles to everyone inside. In the ensuing chaos, Russian special forces breached the residence's perimeter. Later, Zelensky would confirm in an interview that shots were fired inside the presidential offices and that people died during the clash. But the guards held their ground and the attackers never reached their target. With real-time intelligence support, Ukrainian forces fought street battles, ultimately intercepting and destroying the Wagner Group and Kadyrovites before they could complete their mission.
What details did we know? And some things were new to me as well.
A month later in March 2022, Ukrainian intelligence uncovered 2 more assassination operations supported by Russia, targeting Kyiv. First, Chechen special forces were stationed near Hostomel with a clear order to capture Kyiv and eliminate Zelensky. Based on internal intelligence, the security service of Ukraine and Ukrainian army found the units, leading to intense fighting. This led to the deaths of hundreds of Chechen soldiers before they could achieve their goal. Almost simultaneously, the private military company Redut, backed by the main intelligence directorate, started its own mission. More than 1,000 operatives entered the Kyiv region with the goal of eliminating the government leadership. But the Ukrainian forces, once again warned and prepared, ambushed them. Redut suffered catastrophic losses, losing 90% of its personnel. In August 2023, Ukrainian counterintelligence apprehended a Russian female agent who had been covertly operating in Mykolaiv. She was a local resident and a former employee of a military store who secretly tracked Zelensky's route, photographing key sites such as military warehouses, electronic warfare stations, and convoy routes, before his visits in his capacity as president. The security service of Ukraine caught her red-handed as she was preparing to send the intelligence to her Russian handler, possibly to guide a precision airstrike or a drone attack. Analysts believe she was acting under the direction of the Federal Security Service. Such attacks, as well as the plot in Poland and the betrayal of Colonels Andrei Guk and Alexander Derkach, illustrate the ongoing complexity of assassination attempts against President Zelensky.
Large-scale simultaneous operations by Kadyrovtsi, Chechens, and Wagnerites, more than 1,000 militants and a breakthrough group.
From armed raids and mercenary squads at the beginning of the war, to the quiet activation of a double agent who had peacefully lived in Poland for decades, and to bribing members of the Ukrainian security team. Ukrainian officials now estimate that Zelensky has survived more than 10 serious assassination attempts. They are not intended to change the front line. Their goal is to eliminate the Ukrainian hero and send a signal that no one is beyond Putin's reach, even on a NATO military airbase.
I wonder, did Hitler try to kill Stalin, and accordingly, did Stalin try to kill Hitler? Honestly, I don't see any sense in killing Zelensky, but maybe in Putin's eyes, it's some kind of symbolic act. And Putin, of course, is an absolute maniac. That's how Putin sees the world. He takes revenge even when it makes no sense, except to satisfy that feeling of his. It doesn't solve any problems. A normal head of state would turn away from that. But maniacal guys like Putin, I don't know what Hitler was like, but Stalin was definitely similar in this sense.
In 2006, Alexander Litvinenko was poisoned with polonium in London. In 2018, Sergei Skripal survived a nerve agent attack in the United Kingdom, which led to the death of a civilian. Alexei Navalny was exposed to chemical agents in 2020, was then imprisoned under harsh conditions, and later died from sudden death syndrome, whatever that means, in a Russian prison. In 2023, after organizing a rebellion against the Russian military leadership, Yevgeny Prigozhin died when his plane exploded in midair. There were also defenestrations since the start of the war in Ukraine in early 2022. At least 230 well-known Russians, including businessmen, officials, journalists, and critics, have died under mysterious circumstances. An astonishing number of them have fallen victim to sudden falls or accidental incidents involving windows. For example, in early September of 2022, Ravel Maganov, the chairman of LUKOIL, fell out of a hospital window and was found dead shortly after President Putin visited the same facility. Authorities deemed it suicide. A month later, wealthy regional politician and deputy Pavel Antov fell from a hotel window in India. His death was officially ruled an accident, but it was preceded by a message in which he criticized Russia's actions in Ukraine. Just recently, in February 2025, anti-war musician Vadim Strelikin reportedly fell from the 10th floor of his apartment in St. Petersburg during a visit from security services. Investigators have opened a criminal case amid suspicions of foul play. These are not isolated incidents. They are part of an established pattern of violence carried out on Putin's orders, often in full view of the world and sometimes abroad. What matters is not that someone was killed, but where and when. The goal is always to remind others of the influence of the Russian president and the finality of his decision. This deadly instinct now drives the campaigns against Zelensky.
I honestly suspect that vindictiveness is not unique to Putin. As I already said, Josif Zelenovic never forgot even the smallest offense. Peter I personally tortured those who offended him. So those who weren't very pleasing to Ivan the Terrible had to die in agony. Maybe we've gotten soft here in the West with our jacuzzis and filet mignons, but for almost 6,000 years of human history, that's exactly how everyone who sought or seized power acted in order to keep it. Putin is, in my opinion, one of the most despicable figures, but is he literally just a quarter of a millimeter better than the scoundrel Khrushchev, who asked Stalin to increase the quota for arrests and executions of the Ukrainian intelligentsia? And a quarter of a micron worse than, or maybe not, by the way, Dzerzhinsky, Malenkov, Bulganin, Sverdlov, and other Trotskys. By the way, Trotsky was an exceptional scoundrel. For example, in Kronstadt, when he suppressed the so-called uprising, all they wanted was more independence, more rights, more democracy, the very things they fought for. For example, he executed most of the garrison and the civilian population for whom supposedly the Bolsheviks had carried out the revolution in the first place. But maybe you think Obama was better?
The CIA was involved in rigging yet another election against President Trump. We know what they did with Hunter Biden's laptop and how they contributed to it, but now we have it. The new CIA director, John Redcliffe, explains this to us today. The truth is now visible to the world. Brennan, Clapper, and Comey manipulated the intelligence officers. They continue to try to harm Trump.
The mentioned trio of leaders of the CIA, FBI, and national intelligence created a disinformation center with the goal of stopping Trump during his first term, meaning Trump, the 45th president, and preventing his re-election. And the entire deep state worked on this perfectly, magnificently, better than ever, well, because it was really necessary. Now,
thank you to the career CIA officers who,
The CIA officers who released this report conducted the investigation and made the facts public. This is Brennan, whom you remember. He was one of the worst, claiming that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian. The text shows signs of Russian disinformation facilitated through the CIA. It also mentions those who worked for Obama. And Obama knew this was happening back in 2016. Now he gave us a story about it. But we also have the actual document. So this came from the CIA, a memo from Director John Redcliffe and from the Deputy Director with a message to the Director about what was happening. He says, "All right, Director." Now, in May 2025, the CIA director, the new CIA director, John Redcliffe, instructed the CIA's Directorate of Analysis, known as Directorate of Analysis, to conduct a review of the lessons learned, procedures, and analytical methods used in the most classified version of the intelligence community's assessment, called the Next Russian Influence Campaign, targeting the 2016 elections. Remember how much they talked about it? After Trump's victory, there was a nonstop investigation into Trump-Russia collusion, with a song-like chant of Trump-Russia collusion. The review focused special attention on the most discussed judgment, which was that President Putin sought to help Trump. So, relying on CIA materials provided for congressional investigations, the CIA's Directorate of Analysis studied whether there were any procedural anomalies or any weaknesses in the CIA's operational tradecraft that could have affected the validity and objectivity of this key judgment and the overall assessment.
that is, to check whether the facts are true and what logic led to the conclusions that Trump and Putin are tied together by the same string. So,
to understand the procedural and
Thus, to understand the procedural and professional issues identified in this review, it is necessary to examine the politically charged environments and unique circumstances that led to the development of this report about Trump and Russia. The intelligence community assessment happened at the end of 2016. During this time, intelligence officials made contradictory public and private statements about Russia's role in the United States, the presidential elections, and this created confusion about the actual assessment of the intelligence community. That's right, everyone was saying different things. Now, these conflicting reports prompted President Obama, who was still in office at the time, on December 6th, to instruct then-Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, conduct a comprehensive review of all available intelligence information and provide your best assessment on Russia. Guess what happened before December 6th? Trump fired, remember? So Obama, oh damn, they're going to come here. So how can we nullify this? I know Russia gave this to Trump, and then we can impeach him and ruin his entire first term with a fake impeachment. However, before the leak assessment began, media reports suggesting the intelligence community had reached final conclusions created an anchoring effect. It's obvious Putin stole the election. No one could beat Hillary, so the Russians must have done it by hacking her emails. On December 9th, the Washington Post and the New York Times. And then Obama comes out on the 6th. He orders his henchman Clapper in National Intelligence to push this case. Then both received leaks. Intelligence reports concluded with high confidence that Russia interfered to help Trump win the election. They were the first to deny the election results, by the way, so never let them get away with it. The Post cited an unnamed United States official who described this as the consensus opinion of the intelligence community. Putin helped Trump win. There is no evidence of this, and they are provoking a conflict with a nuclear power that isn't even real. Now, procedural matters, Directorate of Analysis's office review. So the CIA management review revealed numerous procedural anomalies in the preparation of the fake report about Trump's collusion with Russia. The timelines for production were extremely compressed. Yes, because they needed something to hit Trump with since he was taking office in a month. Hello, strict isolation so that no one knew what these little criminals were doing, and excessive involvement of agency heads. This was crucial to all, leading to deviations from standard practices. You're joking about composing, coordinating, and verifying a fabricated story about Trump. Now these deviations interfered with attempts to apply strict technique. especially to the most controversial assessment judgment.
And, oh surprise, they found that there were no facts and the logic was illogical. But most importantly, they found that there was neither analysis nor discussion. So what was there? Well, it usually takes about 7, 8, or 9 months of work by a whole group of analysts. But none of that happened at all. The assignment was received, and a week later, the report was on the boss's desk, which started circulating around Washington as a formal CIA investigation. But what's interesting is that the person who physically typed up this report, as we now know, didn't have access to those who supposedly gathered the materials. Now listen.
Rushing this report to annul the elections. This limited the author's ability to collaborate with a wider circle of colleagues. Now, regarding the judgment that Putin, as quoted, he sought, what a beautiful phrase. What does it mean? Sought. Okay, for example, did he help? Facilitated, ordered. What does it mean? That's why they say this was one of the highly classified CIA reports. The key point comes from the CIA. Brennan, an Obama appointee and anti-Trump fanatic frequently seen in the media and communicating with Jen Psaki, had limited access to this information. Brennan just holds it up, shoves it in everyone's face, and says, "Here it is, take it." A CIA manager stated that unequal access to segmented information between coordinators who compiled the report and reviewers contributed to the chaos. And all of this is moving forward very quickly. He said that some key analysts and managers were not even allowed to review the socially controversial aspects of Christophine. Due to national security, they could only view parts of the draft out of context. Everyone signed off without knowing the accusations. Broader access to the report before and during preparation would have likely led to improved and more analytical discussions. Even within the small group of staff who had access to the most classified information, the claim that Putin sought to help Trump win sparked a healthy and prolonged discussion. People are asking, what does that even mean? Sought, what does that mean? Including more voices with additional time for discussion would undoubtedly have clarified and challenged this detail. Here's another empty report from a federal agency like the FBI or National Security Agency. In 2017, it was reported that the most highly classified version of this report was given to more than 200 United States officials. The level is unusually high for such tightly compartmentalized material, and it raises the question of whether the extreme restrictions on access to the main intelligence within the intelligence community during its preparation were justified.
That is, almost no one at the CIA saw the report, knew the facts, or understood the logic. Why? Because it was extremely secret. But this classified report was shown to everyone who had never been shown anything before, so it suddenly turned out to be unclassified. They classified it from those who were supposed to make this report, but then they declassified it for those to whom it was distributed around the world. And the strangest thing is that the heads of the 3 main United States intelligence agencies personally worked on this. Now we know that they reported to Obama with a fake, bogus document, and he played a leading and guiding role in this deception.
But
in his book, John Brennan, he wrote a book called Undaunted. Don't buy it. Brennan reveals that he established key elements of the process with the White House before the involvement of the National Intelligence Council. So Brennan's CIA is working with Obama to fabricate a story, bypassing the National Intelligence Council, claiming that he told them that Tero would take the lead in drafting the report. This is our jurisdiction. I, John Brennan, declare that our coordination will be limited to the CIA, FBI, and National Security Agency, agencies under our control, not theirs. Normally, this would be handled, as it's not an emergency. This is post-election. Russia attempted to sway the election, but Trump was victorious. They were clearly trying to alter the outcome. So these deviations from standard procedure are the reason why only the top leaders were involved in this. Because all of them will come out. Office of the Director of National Intelligence, CIA, FBI, National Security Agency. They learned from 2016, leading to a strategy change in 2020. Created on January 6th to clean up after the Ukrainian elections? Damn. Deviations from standard procedure limited coordination and vetting of expertise and led to the exclusion of key intelligence agencies from the process. A review of the 2016 report showed how deviations from established processes can shape and influence qualitative analysis. Although the overall assessment was justified, the identified procedural anomalies and questions of professional expertise emphasized this. Critical lessons for working with controversial or politically charged topics are adhering to established critical lessons. Do you mean the accusations? Following established analytical processes and strict work rules is necessary to ensure trust, objectivity, and accuracy, especially when time pressure, confidential information, and increased attention can compromise standard practices. It was an operation carried out by agency heads, dictated by Obama. They're going to insert some general phrases here. We will stick to a strict methodology. It was an intelligence operation. You just explained that. Rushed assessments to meet tight deadlines can compromise analytical accuracy, eroding trust. We need more time, so next time you try to steal an election, please don't rush, okay? Don't do it so quickly. Uneven access to classified information also complicates the task. You should share your file folders on the drives with your colleagues so they can access your files. You know, otherwise no one will know when you're trying to rig the elections together. The involvement of agency heads. Excessive interference in the election rigging process can intimidate analysts. So next time you're going to steal the elections, please ensure a more transparent process. All right. Levels of trust and alternative analysis are also important. According to the text, they regularly conduct internal post-war reviews. These tools are crucial for determining the appropriate actions. The CIA will use these lessons to keep improving. The CIA has taken several steps ahead of 2024 to minimize or avoid the problems they faced in 2016. We have provided clear expectations and guidance.
Gentlemen, everything is clear, right? We were lied to, manipulated, silenced, but they didn't succeed. In November of 2024, we broke through. They couldn't organize a second time what they did in 2020. They couldn't because we broke through. I don't know if it's possible to punish for all of this or if it's all covered up by various things with fake permits, assignments, or maybe these people have already received them a long time ago. Or, pardon me, from Biden? These bastards will get away with it. I hope not. And I hope that one day we'll see Obama together with the Hillarys among the defendants. But most importantly, we're cleaning up this nightmare. One after another, crimes are being revealed against whom? Against you and me. And today, General Flynn told Trump, you got your bill through the Senate and Congress. Now it's time to deal with the deep state. It's time to not just pluck them out, but to uproot them.
Following the passing of Trump's major bill, many are urging him to target the deep state. Last night I told you how the head of the CIA shared a new report proving that former President Obama, Clapper, Comey, and Brennan used their power to attack President Trump. Listen to what General Michael Flynn said about the advice he would give President Trump now that the big, beautiful bill has been passed.
What needs to be done here? I would gather my team, those close and trusted personal advisors that he has. And I would say something like, look, we just crushed the Iranian nuclear program and pushed them back by 10 years. Let's say, I want this team to crush the deep state just like we just crushed the Iranian nuclear program. But for it to be permanent, that's why we need to come up with ideas now on how to massively shut down, agencies, organizations, maybe even entire departments, and get rid of a bunch of people. And we also have to, and I would look directly at my Attorney General and probably at the Director of National Intelligence and say, you two work together. And I would instruct these two people to come to me with a plan. That's what I mean. So probably I would give them maybe 72 hours. And I would say I want a plan for the investigation, and then I want to see charges, and I want to see some people questioned right now. This battle between good and evil will help us understand better. We need to understand right now that if we don't take the evidence, if we don't take into account the information we're getting, the American people are standing there just like I am. Right now we're standing or sitting and saying, please, Mr. President, take action.
All right? So General Michael Flynn, the former head of national security under Obama, who was imprisoned because of the Russiagate situation and the Logan Act, is now speaking when he talks to President Trump after signing a big, beautiful bill. Now it's time to strike at the deep state, shut it down forever, bring people in, press charges, arrest people. And he says, I would give Pam Bondi 72 hours to launch this and finish it. Let me know in the comments what you think about this. I think it's great. I say go ahead, let's finish this thing. They ruined the country, and it's time to take our country back and put these criminals in jail.
The conversation is about what we all hope will happen, what we're waiting for. Crimes have been committed. We know who committed them. We know why. We know that everything they said and did was a lie, and that they knew it was deception and forgery. It's not like they were innocent or anything. They knew it was deception and forgery. They held America back from developing for 4 years, and now they're trying to do the same thing again. It's all about investigations, facts laid out in the right order, and what we call that. So on July 4th, Trump signs a bill that he calls the Big Beautiful Bill. And gentlemen, in any case, a new era of America begins. It started, of course, on Election Day, but then it changed again when Trump came to the White House on January 20th. And now the third epochal event. We are beginning to carry out all those plans we've dreamed about. But it's not the Bolsheviks, it's us, you and me. And we're definitely not Mensheviks or Bolsheviks. We're just people who want not to be destroyed, not to be lied to. And so that we have the opportunity to pursue the happiness we want in the ways that we want. At the same time, we promise to do our best not to interfere with our neighbor doing the same. Goodbye. Subtitles created by